When Thomas Hargrove discovered the perfectly circular crater that appeared overnight on his Montana ranch, glowing with an eerie blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat, he never imagined he'd be facing down a mining corporation backed by government officials, or that his stand would lead to NASA scientists uncovering a truth about humanity's past that would shake the foundations of everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. What began as a simple act of protecting his land would soon reveal an ancient secret buried beneath the red soil of Copper Valley, a secret that connected his family's legacy to visitors from beyond the stars, and a mission that had been waiting thousands of years to be fulfilled. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning mist still clung to the rolling hills of Copper Valley as Thomas Hargrove made his usual rounds, checking fence lines on his 200-acre ranch. At 52, his weathered hands and sun-creased face told the story of 3 decades working this unforgiving Montana landscape, land that had been in the Hargrove family since his great-great-grandfather staked his claim in 1887. The early September air carried the first hints of autumn, a reminder that winter would soon transform these golden grasslands into a harsh, windswept expanse where only the most resilient survived. Thomas paused at the crest of Red Rock Ridge, the highest point on his property, to survey his domain. The ranch stretched out below him like a patchwork quilt of grazing pastures, hayfields, and the winding creek that provided water for his modest herd of cattle. It wasn't the most profitable operation in the state, but it was honest work that had sustained 5 generations of Hargroves. That morning, however, something was different. Where yesterday there had been solid ground at the base of the ridge, now there was a massive crater, perfectly circular and approximately 40 feet in diameter. The sight stopped Thomas in his tracks. He blinked hard, wondering if the pre-dawn coffee hadn't quite kicked in yet, but the crater remained. Its edges were impossibly smooth, as if carved by a giant compass, and the bottom appeared to glow with a faint blue luminescence that was visible even in the growing daylight. No explosion marks scarred the surrounding earth, no debris littered the area, and most puzzling of all, no tracks led to or from the site. It was as if the earth had simply decided to open up and swallow a perfect circle of itself. Thomas's first thought was of the old stories his grandfather Walter used to tell, tales of strange lights in the sky over Copper Valley that the Native Americans had witnessed long before European settlers arrived. Walter had been fascinated by these legends, keeping detailed journals of unusual occurrences and astronomical observations that most folks dismissed as the eccentric hobby of a man who'd spent too many lonely nights on the range. Thomas had inherited those journals along with the ranch, though he'd never paid them much attention beyond their sentimental value. Approaching the crater cautiously, Thomas felt an unusual sensation, like static electricity raising the hair on his arms. The morning sounds of birds and insects seemed muted near the edge, creating a bubble of unnatural quiet. As he peered into the depths, he could see that the crater wasn't just a hole, but seemed to contain some kind of structure. The blue glow emanated from intricate patterns carved into what appeared to be a metallic surface at the bottom, patterns that shifted and moved like liquid mercury when viewed from different angles. His contemplation was interrupted by the distant rumble of vehicles approaching along the county road that bordered his property. Through the morning haze, Thomas could make out a convoy of trucks bearing the distinctive logo of Pinnacle Mining Corporation, the company that had been aggressively buying up land throughout Copper Valley for the past 2 years. They'd made several offers on the Hargrove Ranch, each more insistent than the last, claiming their geological surveys indicated valuable rare earth mineral deposits in the area. Thomas had refused every offer, as had a handful of other long-time ranchers in the valley, but one by one, his neighbors had succumbed to the combination of financial pressure and Pinnacle's increasingly aggressive tactics. The Caldwell Ranch, to the east, had been the most recent to fall, sold just last month after a mysterious contamination of their water supply made cattle operations impossible. Ben Caldwell had sworn the contamination was no accident, but without proof, he'd had little choice but to accept Pinnacle's generous buyout offer. The convoy turned onto the private road leading to the Hargrove ranch house, and Thomas quickly descended from the ridge to meet them. By the time he reached the main gate, 3 vehicles had pulled up. 2 trucks filled with workers in hard hats and high-visibility vests, and a sleek black SUV from which emerged a man in an expensive suit that looked entirely out of place in the Montana countryside. Marcus Blackwell, Senior Vice President of Land Acquisition for Pinnacle Mining, stepped out with the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. Thomas had met him twice before, and neither encounter had been pleasant. Blackwell had the sharp features and calculating eyes of a predator, his smile never quite reaching those eyes as he extended his hand in greeting. "Mr. Hargrove," Blackwell said smoothly, "I hope you'll forgive the early hour, but our monitoring equipment detected some unusual seismic activity in this area last night. As part of our commitment to community safety, we wanted to ensure everything was stable." Thomas didn't shake the offered hand. "Seismic activity? You mean like an earthquake?" "Precisely," Blackwell replied, unfazed by the rebuff. "Our geological team registered a localized disturbance centered on your property. We are concerned about potential ground instability that could affect the entire valley." Thomas crossed his arms, blocking the gate with his body. "Funny thing about that. I've lived here all my life, and we've never had so much as a tremor. But ever since Pinnacle started operations, we've had all sorts of strange occurrences. Contaminated water, equipment failures, and now mysterious seismic activity. Quite a coincidence, wouldn't you say?" Blackwell's smile tightened imperceptibly. "I understand your skepticism, Mr. Hargrove, but I assure you our operations adhere to the strictest safety standards. May we have your permission to conduct a brief survey, purely for safety assessment purposes, of course?" "No," Thomas replied flatly. "This is private property, and you have no authority here. If you're genuinely concerned about public safety, you can file a report with the county and go through proper channels." One of the workers in the trucks shifted restlessly, and Thomas noticed several of them carried equipment that looked more suited to mining operations than safety inspections. Ground-penetrating radar units, core sampling drills, and what appeared to be sophisticated scanning devices were visible in the truck beds. Blackwell followed Thomas's gaze, and his demeanor shifted subtly. "Mr. Hargrove, I'll be direct. Our satellites detected an anomaly on your property last night, something that could be of significant scientific and economic interest. Pinnacle Mining is prepared to make you an extremely generous offer for access rights, or if you prefer, for the entire property. The sum would be life-changing." "My life doesn't need changing," Thomas replied, "and whatever's on my land is my business, not yours." "I admire your principles," Blackwell said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But principles don't pay bills or secure your family's future. The world is changing, Mr. Hargrove. Small operations like yours are becoming obsolete. Why struggle against the inevitable when you could profit from it?" Thomas thought of the crater with its mysterious blue glow and the smooth, impossibly perfect edges. Whatever had created it was far beyond normal explanation, and his instincts told him that Pinnacle's interest went deeper than mere mineral rights. "I'll take my chances," he said. "Now, unless you have a warrant or court order, I'll ask you to leave." Blackwell's expression hardened. "This is a mistake, Mr. Hargrove. Pinnacle Mining has significant resources and influence. We prefer cooperation, but we're not above using legal means to achieve our objectives. That anomaly could pose a danger to the community, and we have a responsibility to investigate. Then get a court order, Thomas repeated. Until then, get off my land. For a moment, the two men faced each other in tense silence. Then Blackwell nodded curtly to his team. Very well, but this conversation isn't over. I hope you'll reconsider before you find yourself overwhelmed by forces beyond your control. As the Pinnacle convoy departed, Thomas watched them go with a growing sense of unease. He knew Blackwell's threat wasn't empty. The company had deep pockets and political connections that extended far beyond Copper Valley. How long could he hold out against such pressure? And more importantly, what exactly was he protecting? Returning to the house, Thomas found his daughter, Sarah, waiting on the porch, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. At 24, she had her mother's intelligent eyes and her father's stubborn determination. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. After completing her degree in environmental science, she'd returned to help with the ranch while deciding her next move. Though Thomas suspected her presence had more to do with his recent health scare than career indecision. Dad, what did Pinnacle want this time? She asked, noting his troubled expression. Same as always, but with more urgency, Thomas replied. He hesitated, then added, Sarah, I need to show you something. Grab your hiking boots. 20 minutes later, they stood at the edge of the crater, Sarah's scientific training warring with her disbelief at what she was seeing. The blue glow was more pronounced now, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost organic. This is impossible, she whispered, kneeling to examine the perfectly smooth edge. No natural formation could create something this precise. And that material at the bottom. It doesn't look like any mineral I've studied. Thomas watched his daughter's analytical mind engage with the mystery. Your great-grandfather used to tell stories about lights in the sky and strange occurrences in these hills. I always thought they were just tales, but now I'm not so sure. Sarah stood abruptly. We need to document this before Pinnacle finds a way to access it. And we should contact someone, maybe the university's geology department. No, Thomas said firmly. Not yet. The moment word gets out, we'll have more than just Pinnacle to deal with. Government agencies, media, curiosity seekers. We need to understand what we're dealing with first. As if in response to his words, the crater's glow intensified momentarily, and both felt a subtle vibration through the ground. Sarah pulled out her phone to take photos, but the device screen flickered and went dark. Electronic interference, she murmured. Whatever's down there is emitting some kind of electromagnetic field. Thomas remembered his grandfather's journals, stored in the old chest in the attic. I think it's time we looked at Walter's writings more carefully. He documented strange phenomena in this area for decades. Maybe there's something there that can help us understand what's happening. They spent the afternoon poring over Walter Hargrove's meticulous records, finding references to sky fires, unexplained lights, and what he called the humming earth, centered around Red Rock Ridge. Most intriguing was an entry from 1952 that described a perfect circle of starlight that appeared one night and vanished by morning, leaving the ground singing with energy. He knew, Sarah said softly, tracing the faded ink with her finger, or at least suspected something was here. Look at this map. She unfolded a hand-drawn chart of the ranch with various markings and symbols. One area was circled repeatedly, with notes about convergence point and stellar alignment. The marked location corresponded exactly with where the crater had appeared. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ranch, Thomas made a decision that would change everything. We're going to protect this, whatever it is. Not for money or glory, but because it chose to reveal itself here on our land. There's a reason for that. Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of her father's words. The Hargrove legacy wasn't just about land or cattle. It was about stewardship of something greater than themselves. That night, as Thomas lay awake listening to the wind whistle through the valley, he thought he could hear a faint humming coming from the direction of the crater. It was a sound that seemed to resonate in his bones, ancient and patient, as if it had been waiting a very long time to be heard. The next morning brought new challenges. Thomas discovered fresh tire tracks along the fence line bordering the county road, evidence of nighttime surveillance. Someone had been watching, waiting for an opportunity to investigate the crater without permission. He reinforced the gates and began regular patrols, but he knew it was only a matter of time before Pinnacle made their next move. That move came sooner than expected. 2 days after the crater's appearance, Sheriff Rita Torres arrived at the ranch with papers in hand and an apologetic expression on her weathered face. Rita had been a friend of the family for 30 years, attending the same high school as Thomas, and he could see the conflict in her eyes. "Tom, I'm sorry about this," she said, handing him the documents. "Pinnacle's filed an emergency injunction claiming your property contains a potential environmental hazard that requires immediate investigation. Judge Hawthorne signed off on it this morning." Thomas scanned the papers, his jaw tightening. "Patricia Hawthorne? The same judge who ruled in Pinnacle's favor on the water rights dispute last year?" Rita nodded grimly. "The same. Look, I've bought you some time. The order doesn't take effect until tomorrow morning, and I made sure to specify that any investigation must be supervised by county officials. But Tom, they're bringing in their own experts, and they've got state backing on this." "Since when does a mining company have the authority to investigate environmental hazards?" Sarah asked, joining them on the porch. "Since they convinced the state that their geological monitoring systems detected something that could pose a risk to the regional water table," Rita explained. "They're claiming the seismic event could have created underground instabilities." Oh, Thomas knew this was just legal maneuvering, a foot in the door that Pinnacle would use to gain access to the crater. Once their experts were on site, they'd find ways to extend their presence indefinitely. "What are our options?" he asked. Rita glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Officially, comply with the order and hope for the best. Unofficially, I'd suggest you document everything, get your own experts if you can, and maybe reach out to some media contacts. Public attention might make them think twice about any heavy-handed tactics." After Rita left, Thomas and Sarah held a war council. They had less than 24 hours before Pinnacle's team would arrive, legally sanctioned to investigate the crater. Whatever secrets it held would soon be exposed to corporate interests that cared only for profit and exploitation. "We need help," Sarah said decisively. "Real scientific help, not corporate shills." She pulled out her laptop, scrolling through contacts from her university days. "I know someone who might be interested. Dr. Elizabeth Chen. She was a visiting professor in my advanced geology seminar. She works for a government agency now, something to do with unexplained geological phenomena." Thomas was skeptical. Government involvement could make things worse. They might classify the whole thing, seal off the area. "Maybe," Sarah conceded. "But Dr. Chen is different. She's dedicated to scientific truth, not political agendas. And if this crater is what I think it might be, we need someone with her level of clearance on our side." As Sarah composed an urgent email with attached photos of the crater, Thomas returned to his grandfather's journals. There had to be something more, some clue about what Walter had known or suspected. In the back of the final volume, he found a sealed envelope with his name written in Walter's shaky handwriting. The paper was aged and brittle, suggesting it had been placed there decades ago. With trembling hands, Thomas opened the envelope and unfolded the letter within. To my grandson. Thomas, if you're reading this, then the time has come. What appeared in our valley in 1952 was no natural phenomenon. I met them that night, the ones who created the circle of light. They spoke without words, showing me images of Earth's future, of choices humanity would face. They left something behind, something that would remain dormant until the proper moment. They chose our family as guardians, not by chance, but because of our connection to this land. We understand that true ownership means stewardship, that we are caretakers of something greater than ourselves. The crater will return when humanity stands at a crossroads, when greed threatens to consume what should be preserved. Protect it, Thomas. Not from discovery, but from exploitation. What lies beneath holds answers our species desperately needs, but only if approached with wisdom rather than avarice. The visitors will return when the guardian proves worthy. Trust in the land, in our legacy, and in the purpose that has been entrusted to us. Your loving grandfather, Walter Hargrove. Thomas read the letter 3 times, each reading deepening his understanding of the responsibility that had been passed down through generations. The crater wasn't random or accidental. It was a test, a calling that his family had been preparing for without even knowing it. Sarah's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Dad, you need to see this." She turned her laptop screen toward him, showing an email response that had arrived with surprising speed. "Dr. Chen wants to come immediately. She says our photos match energy signatures. Her department has been tracking across multiple locations. She's bringing a small team, and, Dad, she works for NASA's exogeology division." The pieces were falling into place with frightening rapidity. Whatever lay beneath their ranch wasn't just valuable to mining interests. It was connected to something much larger, something that government agencies had been quietly monitoring for years. The question now was whether they could trust Dr. Chen and her team, or if they were simply trading one form of exploitation for another. As the day wore on, Thomas and Sarah prepared for the convergence of forces descending on their small ranch. They secured the crater site as best they could, setting up game cameras to document any unauthorized access. Sarah created detailed maps and photographs, uploading them to secure cloud storage as insurance against confiscation. Thomas reached out to Ben Caldwell and other displaced ranchers, warning them about Pinnacle's latest maneuver and asking them to spread the word about what was happening. That evening, as the sun painted the Montana sky in brilliant oranges and purples, a private jet descended toward Copper Valley's small airport. Dr. Amelia Chen and her team had arrived, hours before Pinnacle's scheduled investigation. The race to uncover the truth about the mysterious crater had begun, and Thomas Hargrove found himself at the center of a conflict that would challenge everything he thought he knew about his land, his family's legacy, and humanity's place in the cosmos. The hum from the crater had grown stronger, as if responding to the approaching moment of revelation. Thomas stood at the edge of the ridge, watching the last light fade from the sky, and wondered if his grandfather had felt this same mixture of fear and purpose when he first encountered the visitors all those years ago. Tomorrow would bring answers, but tonight the crater kept its secrets, pulsing with that steady blue light like a beacon calling across the vast distances of space and time. The pre-dawn hours found Dr. Amelia Chen and her NASA team establishing a makeshift command center in the Hargrove barn. The space, which normally housed farming equipment and winter feed supplies, had been transformed into a high-tech operations hub complete with portable computers, satellite communication arrays, and specialized monitoring equipment that Thomas couldn't begin to identify. The contrast between the weathered wooden beams and cutting-edge technology created a surreal atmosphere that matched the extraordinary circumstances. Dr. Chen herself was a study in focused energy, her short black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail as she directed her team with quiet efficiency. At 45, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had spent years investigating phenomena that defied conventional explanation. Her team consisted of 3 specialists: Dr. David Park, a quantum physicist whose theoretical work on dimensional interfaces had earned him both acclaim and skepticism in academic circles; Dr. Maria Vasquez, an exobiologist who had previously worked on analyzing potential microbial life in Martian soil samples; and Jake Thompson, a young technician whose expertise in electromagnetic field analysis had proven invaluable in previous, unexplained events. Mr. Hargrove, Miss Hargrove, Dr. Chen addressed them as her team completed their setup. I want to thank you for contacting us. What you've discovered here is unprecedented in its clarity and accessibility. We've been tracking similar energy signatures at various locations around the globe, but they've always been ephemeral, disappearing before we could properly investigate. Sarah leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her exhaustion. Similar signatures? Are you saying there are more of these craters? No, not craters exactly, Dr. Chen replied, pulling up a holographic display that showed a world map dotted with pulsing points. We've detected temporal electromagnetic anomalies at 7 specific locations worldwide. Until now, they've manifested as brief energy spikes, usually lasting only minutes or hours. Your crater is the first physical manifestation we've been able to document. Thomas studied the map, noting the seemingly random distribution of points across different continents. What makes our location special? Why did it fully manifest here? Dr. Park interjected, his enthusiasm barely contained. Based on our preliminary readings, your property sits at a unique convergence of geological and magnetic factors. The bedrock here contains an unusual concentration of crystalline structures that may act as natural amplifiers for whatever energy these phenomena produce. Combined with the specific astronomical alignments we've been tracking, David, Dr. Chen interrupted gently, perhaps we should start with what we've observed so far. She turned back to the Hargroves. We deployed sensors around the greater perimeter as soon as we arrived. The energy readings are unlike anything in our database. The electromagnetic field is operating at frequencies that shouldn't be possible with known physics, and the material at the crater's base appears to be composed of elements not found on the periodic table. Sarah's eyes widened. Extraterrestrial origin. That's one possibility, Dr. Chen acknowledged. But we need more data before making such determinations. What we can confirm is that the crater is not a simple hole in the ground. Our ground-penetrating radar suggests it extends downward for at least 300 feet, possibly more. The readings become increasingly distorted the deeper we scan. Thomas felt a chill despite the warm morning air. 300 feet, but the crater appeared. Overnight, how is that possible? Dr. Vasquez spoke up for the first time, her voice carrying a hint of an accent. That's what's so fascinating. There's no displaced earth, no debris field that would indicate excavation. It's as if the matter simply ceased to exist, or more accurately, was transformed into something else entirely. Jake Thompson, who had been monitoring a bank of instruments, suddenly called out, "Dr. Chen, we're getting increased activity. The pulse rate is accelerating." The team rushed to the monitors, where complex waveforms danced across multiple screens. Even to Thomas's untrained eye, the patterns looked more organized than random, almost like a language being spoken in the electromagnetic pulses. "It's responding to something," Dr. Chen murmured, her fingers flying over a keyboard. "The patterns are too structured to be natural phenomena. Jake, can you isolate the frequency modulations?" As the young technician worked, Sarah moved closer. "To the screens. It looks almost like a communication attempt. See how the pulses group in prime number sequences. Dr. Chen's head snapped up. You recognize prime sequences in this? Sarah nodded. I studied pattern recognition in my advanced mathematics courses. Those groupings, 3, 5, 7, 11, they're definitely prime numbers. It's like the SETI protocols for establishing intelligent communication. The revelation sent a ripple of excitement through the team. If the crater was indeed attempting communication, it suggested an intelligence behind its creation that went far beyond natural phenomena or even advanced technology. It implied purpose and intention. Thomas's mind raced back to his grandfather's letter. Walter had mentioned meeting them, beings who communicated without words. Could this electromagnetic language be similar to what his grandfather had experienced decades ago? We need to get closer readings, Dr. Chen decided. The instruments here are good, but direct observation could provide crucial data. Mr. Hargrove, would you permit us to approach the crater? Before Thomas could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles filled the morning air. Through the barn's open doors, they could see a convoy of trucks turning onto the ranch road. Pinnacle Mining had arrived exactly at the legally mandated time, accompanied by Sheriff Torres and what appeared to be state officials. Looks like we're about to have company, Thomas said grimly, and they won't be happy to find you already here. Dr. Chen's expression hardened with determination. We have federal authority to investigate potential threats to national security. Your crater's energy signature triggered protocols that supersede state jurisdiction. However, I'd prefer to avoid jurisdictional conflicts, if possible. The Pinnacle convoy pulled up to the barn, and Marcus Blackwell emerged from the lead vehicle. With an expression that cycled through surprise, anger, and calculated charm in rapid succession. He was accompanied by a team of people in white hazmat suits carrying equipment cases, as well as several men in dark suits who had the unmistakable bearing of government agents. Well, this is unexpected, Blackwell said, his voice carrying false warmth. I wasn't aware the federal government had been notified about our little environmental concern. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her NASA credentials prominently displayed. Mr. Blackwell, I presume. I'm Dr. Amelia Chen, NASA Exogeology Division. We detected anomalous readings from this location that fall under our investigative purview. I believe we have overlapping interests here. Blackwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. Indeed, though I must say, NASA's involvement in what we believe to be a geological instability seems rather excessive. Our team is fully equipped to assess any environmental hazards. I'm sure they are, Dr. Chen replied smoothly. However, the energy signatures we've detected suggest this phenomenon extends beyond conventional geological events. We are happy to coordinate our efforts, of course. Thomas watched the exchange with growing unease. The presence of both corporate and government interests had transformed his simple ranch into a battleground of competing agendas. Sheriff Torres approached him quietly while the others postured. Tom, this is getting complicated fast, she whispered. Those men with Blackwell? They're not state officials. My sources say they're private security with some very interesting backgrounds. Whatever Pinnacle thinks is here, they're taking it seriously. The standoff was interrupted by a sudden intensification of the crater's energy output. Even from the barn, they could see the blue glow brightening, pulsing with increased urgency. The electromagnetic interference caused several pieces of equipment to spark and malfunction. The patterns changed, Jake called out, frantically trying to recalibrate his instruments. It's not just communicating anymore, it's broadcasting. Dr. Park rushed to examine the readings. The signal strength just increased by a factor of 10. If this continues, it'll be detectable by satellites worldwide within minutes. Blackwell's composed facade cracked slightly. "We need to contain this immediately. My team has equipment that can dampen electromagnetic emissions. If this signal reaches certain parties..." "Contain it." Thomas stepped forward, his frustration boiling over. "This is my land, and whatever's happening here has been entrusted to my family for generations. We're not covering up or containing anything until we understand what we're dealing with." Dr. Chen moved between them diplomatically. "Mr. Hargrove raises a valid point. Any containment efforts could interfere with our ability to properly study the phenomenon. I suggest we establish a joint observation protocol that respects both scientific inquiry and security concerns." As the various parties debated, Sarah noticed something odd in the data streams still visible on the NASA team's monitors. The crater's emissions weren't random or omnidirectional. They were focused, like a beam aimed at specific coordinates in the sky. "Dr. Chen," she called out, drawing the scientist's attention, "look at the directional data. It's not broadcasting everywhere, it's targeting something specific." Dr. Chen and her team quickly analyzed the trajectory. "She's right. The signal is aimed at coordinates that correspond to empty space. No known celestial bodies in that direction." "Not empty," Dr. Park corrected, his excitement palpable. "That region shows anomalous gravitational lensing in recent deep space surveys. Some theorists believe it could indicate the presence of a massive object using advanced cloaking technology." The implications sent a shiver through everyone present. If the crater was indeed signaling to something hidden in space, it suggested a level of coordination and purpose that transcended any earthly concerns about mining rights or scientific discovery. Blackwell's demeanor shifted from corporate smooth talker to something harder, more military in bearing. "This changes things. We need to establish a security perimeter immediately. No communications in or out until we understand what we're dealing with." "Under whose authority?" Thomas demanded. "Last I checked, this is still private property, and Dr. Chen's team has federal jurisdiction. Your court order mentions environmental assessment, not military occupation." The tension in the barn reached a breaking point as various factions faced off, each protecting their own interests. It was Sarah who noticed the subtle change first, a vibration in the ground that seemed to emanate from the direction of the crater. "Everyone, quiet!" she shouted, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. "Something's happening." The vibration grew stronger, accompanied by a low harmonic tone that seemed to resonate in their bones rather than their ears. Equipment readings spiked across all spectrums, and the blue glow from the crater intensified to the point where it cast shadows, even in the bright morning sun. The signals received a response, Dr. Park whispered in awe, watching his instruments. With wide eyes. "Something's answering back." Through the barn's open doors, they could see the air above the crater beginning to distort, like heat waves over hot asphalt, but more structured, more deliberate. The distortion formed geometric patterns that shifted and merged in hypnotic sequences. "We need to get closer," Dr. Chen declared, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. "This could be a once-in-a-lifetime observation opportunity." "Absolutely not," Blackwell countered. "We have no idea what we're dealing with. For all we know, this could be some kind of weapon system activation." Thomas felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. His grandfather's letter had spoken of choosing wisdom over avarice, of protecting the crater not from discovery, but from exploitation. Looking at the faces around him, scientists eager for knowledge, corporate interests hungry for profit, his daughter's mix of fear and wonder, he made his choice. "We all go together," he announced, "but on my terms. This is still Hargrove land, and whatever's happening here was entrusted to my family. We approach with respect, not aggression. No weapons, no extraction equipment. We observe and learn, nothing more." The various parties exchanged glances, calculations running behind their eyes. Finally, Dr. Chen nodded. Agreed. Scientific. Observation only. Blackwell hesitated longer, but eventually conceded. For now, but I reserve the right to reassess if the situation becomes dangerous. As the group prepared to approach the crater, Thomas caught his daughter's eye. Sarah gave him a small nod of approval, and he felt a surge of pride. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as guardians, not exploiters. The procession that made its way toward Red Rock Ridge was unlike anything Copper Valley had ever seen. NASA scientists with portable sensors walked alongside corporate executives in expensive suits, while local law enforcement tried to maintain some semblance of order. At the center of it all were Thomas and Sarah Hargrove, inheritors of a legacy. They were only beginning to understand. As they crested the ridge and the crater came into full view, the group stopped in collective amazement. The blue glow had transformed into a column of light that reached toward the sky, within which complex geometric shapes rotated and merged in patterns that hurt the mind to follow. The air itself seemed alive with energy, crackling with potential. Dr. Vasquez was the first to speak, her voice filled with wonder. It's beautiful, like watching the birth of a star. Or the opening of a door, Sarah added softly, remembering her great-grandfather's words about circles of starlight. Thomas stepped forward, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the crater's edge. As he moved closer, the light column seemed to respond, its patterns shifting to include new geometries that somehow felt welcoming. He remembered Walter's letter mentioning communication without words, and suddenly understood. The crater wasn't just a phenomenon to be studied or exploited, it was an invitation. "It's been waiting," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "Waiting for us to be ready to understand." Blackwell's security team tensed as Thomas approached the crater's edge, their hands moving toward concealed weapons despite the earlier agreement. But Dr. Chen raised her hand to stop them, her scientific instruments showing something remarkable. "Wait, look at the readings. The energy field is adapting to his presence. The frequency modulations are synchronizing with human bioelectric patterns." As Thomas reached the crater's edge, the column of light expanded, enveloping him in a cocoon of swirling energy. For a moment, panic flickered across the watching faces, but Thomas felt no fear. Instead, he experienced a profound sense of connection, as if the crater recognized him not just as an individual, but as part of a continuum stretching back through generations of Hargroves who had protected this land. Images flooded his mind, not his own memories, but visions of the past and glimpses of possible futures. He saw his grandfather as a young man, standing in this very spot on a night in 1952, when the sky had opened and beings of light had descended. He witnessed the moment they had chosen Walter as a guardian, implanting knowledge that would lie dormant until the appointed time. The vision shifted, showing him Earth from space, a blue jewel wrapped in the embrace of unseen forces that had watched over humanity's development for millennia. He saw other worlds, other civilizations that had faced similar crossroads, some that had chosen wisdom and flourished, others that had succumbed to greed and faded into cosmic obscurity. "Dad!" Sarah's voice pulled him back to the present. The light cocoon dissolved, leaving him standing at the crater's edge, physically unchanged but profoundly altered in understanding. "I'm okay," he assured her, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he'd experienced. He turned to face the assembled group, seeing them with new clarity. "I know what this is now, what it's always been." Dr. Chen stepped forward eagerly, her instrument still recording. "What did you experience?" The readings showed massive neural activity, pattern recognition centers lighting up like fireworks. Thomas took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "It's a test. Or more accurately, an opportunity. The beings who created this, they're watchers, guardians of developing civilizations. They plant these seeds at crucial points in a species' evolution, waiting for the moment when we must choose between sustainable progress and self-destructive exploitation. Blackwell scoffed, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. That's quite a claim, Mr. Hargrove. You expect us to believe in benevolent aliens based on some hallucination caused by electromagnetic fields. I don't expect you to believe anything, Thomas replied calmly. But the evidence is right here. This crater isn't just a phenomenon. It's a repository of knowledge, technology that could revolutionize how we interact with our planet. But it will only reveal itself to those who approach it with the right intentions. Dr. Park's instrument suddenly chimed. He's right about one thing. The crater is definitely a container. Our deep scans are showing structured spaces beneath. The visible surface, chambers that seem to be waiting to be accessed. As if responding to the discussion, the crater's glow shifted from blue to a warm golden hue. The geometric patterns in the air above it coalesced into what appeared to be a doorway or portal, its edges defined by precisely arranged light particles. "It's inviting us in," Sarah breathed, moving to stand beside her father. "Just like great-grandpa's," Letta said, "the visitors will return when the Guardian proves worthy." The moment of truth had arrived. The various factions stood at the threshold of something unprecedented, each driven by different motivations, but united in the recognition that whatever lay beyond that portal would change everything. Thomas looked at his daughter, seeing in her eyes the same mixture of courage and responsibility that had driven generations of Hargroves to protect this land. Together, they had stood against corporate pressure, government interest, and the unknown itself. Now, they faced the ultimate test of their stewardship. "Whatever's down there," he said, addressing the group but speaking primarily to Sarah, "we go forward as protectors, not conquerors. This gift wasn't meant for any one person or organization. It belongs to all humanity, but only if we're ready to receive it wisely." Dr. Chen nodded solemnly. "I agree. This discovery transcends national or corporate interests. We need to establish protocols that ensure whatever knowledge we gain is used for the benefit of all." Blackwell remained silent, his calculating gaze fixed on the portal. Thomas could see the conflict in the man's face. The corporate operative, warring with the human being confronted by something genuinely transcendent. As the group prepared to enter the portal, the morning sun climbed higher in the Montana sky, casting long shadows across land that had harbored cosmic secrets for longer than anyone had imagined. The test was no longer about protecting the crater from discovery. It was about proving humanity worthy of the knowledge it contained. Thomas took his daughter's hand, feeling the connection to past and future in that simple gesture. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it as Hargroves had always faced challenges, with courage, integrity, and an understanding that true wealth lay not in what could be extracted from the land, but in what could be preserved for generations to come. The portal pulsed with invitation, and the next chapter of humanity's cosmic journey was about to begin. The portal's golden edges shimmered with an otherworldly luminescence as the assembled group stood at the threshold of the unknown. Thomas felt a strange calmness settle over him, as if generations of Hargrove stewardship had prepared him for this exact moment. The morning air crackled with potential energy, and each breath seemed to carry the weight of imminent revelation. Dr. Amelia Chen adjusted her portable sensors with practiced efficiency, her scientific training warring with the awe that threatened to overwhelm her professional detachment. "The energy readings are stable," she reported, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Whatever this portal is, It appears to be designed for safe passage. Marcus Blackwell's corporate security team had formed a defensive perimeter around their employer, their training evident in their positioning and alertness. Yet even these hardened professionals couldn't hide their unease at the sight of technology that defied every known law of physics. Blackwell himself maintained his composure, though Thomas noticed the slight tremor in his hands as he adjusted his tie, a nervous habit betraying his carefully cultivated facade. "Before anyone enters," Sheriff Rita Torres spoke up, her law, enforcement instincts demanding order even in the face of the impossible, "we need to establish some ground rules. This is still technically a crime scene under the Environmental Hazard Investigation Order." Thomas turned to face the group, drawing strength from the land beneath his feet and the legacy flowing through his veins. "With all due respect, Sheriff, we're beyond conventional jurisdiction here. This crater, this portal, it's been waiting for the right moment, the right approach. My family has been entrusted with its protection for generations, not to keep it hidden, but to ensure it's revealed to those who would use its knowledge wisely." Sarah stepped closer to her father, her scientific curiosity tempered by an intuitive understanding that seemed to flow from the land itself. "The portal is responding to intention," she observed, watching as the golden light pulsed in subtle patterns. "Look at how it brightens when we speak of cooperation and dims when conflict arises." Dr. David Park's instruments confirmed her observation. "Remarkable. The energy frequency modulates in direct response to emotional and intentional states. It's as if the technology can read our purposes." Blackwell's eyes narrowed at this revelation. If that's true, then perhaps only those with pure scientific interest should proceed. Corporate liability concerns alone would prevent Pinnacle from— "No," Thomas interrupted firmly. "That's exactly the kind of selective access my grandfather warned against. This knowledge isn't meant to be hoarded or controlled by any single group. We all go forward together, or not at all." The portal seemed to pulse in agreement, its golden hue warming to an almost welcoming amber. Dr. Maria Vasquez, who had been quietly analyzing biological readings, suddenly gasped. "The portal is emitting what appears to be organized photonic patterns. They're similar to the bioluminescent communication we see in deep ocean creatures, but far more complex." As the scientific discussion continued, Thomas noticed Jake Thompson, the young NASA technician, crouching near the crater's edge with a handheld device. The readout screen displayed rapidly scrolling data that made the young man's eyes widen with each passing second. "Dr. Chen," Jake called out, his voice tight with excitement, "you need to see this. The portal isn't just a doorway, it's a quantum bridge. The matter phase readings suggest it's creating a stable Einstein-Rosen bridge to somewhere else." The implication sent a ripple of excitement through the scientific team. A stable wormhole represented technology beyond humanity's wildest theoretical achievements. Dr. Chen quickly moved to verify the readings, her professional composure cracking as the data confirmed Jake's assessment. "This changes everything we thought we knew about traversable wormholes," she breathed. "The energy requirements alone should be astronomical, yet it's maintaining stability with no visible power source." Blackwell seized on this information. "All the more reason for caution. We have no idea where this bridge leads. For all we know, it could be a trap, a way to lure in unsuspecting—" His words were cut short as the portal suddenly expanded, its golden edges stretching outward until it encompassed the entire crater opening. The geometric patterns within its boundaries rearranged themselves into what appeared to be a star map, with one particular constellation highlighted in pulsing blue light. Sarah moved closer to the display, her astronomy classes suddenly relevant in ways she'd never imagined. "That's the Pleiades cluster," she identified. "But there's something different about the configuration. It's showing stars that aren't visible in our current catalogues. Dr. Park's excitement was palpable. It could be showing us the cluster from a different vantage point, or perhaps from a different time period. The Pleiades have been significant in human mythology across cultures for millennia. Thomas felt a sudden warmth in his chest, a sensation of recognition that transcended logical thought. Without fully understanding why, he reached into his pocket and withdrew his grandfather's compass, an old brass instrument that Walter had carried throughout his life. The compass needle, which should have pointed north, instead swiveled to aim directly at the highlighted constellation in the portal display. "It knows," Thomas murmured, holding up the compass for others to see. Grandfather's compass has always been different. He said it pointed to true direction rather than magnetic north. Now I understand what he meant. Dr. Chen examined the compass with growing fascination. The metal composition is unusual. It contains trace elements that don't match any terrestrial alloys. "Mr. Hargrove, did your grandfather ever mention where he obtained this?" "He said it was a gift," Thomas replied, memory stirring, "from friends who showed him the true path forward. I always thought he meant it metaphorically." The portal's display shifted again, the star map dissolving into a series of images that appeared to tell a story. Scenes of various civilizations flashed by, some recognizably human, but from different eras, others clearly alien, yet sharing common themes of growth, challenge, and transformation. Each civilization faced a moment of crisis, a point where their technological advancement outpaced their wisdom, and each was offered the same choice through similar portals. "It's a pattern," Sarah whispered, understanding dawning. "They've done this before, on other worlds. The portals appear when a species reaches a critical juncture, advanced enough to destroy themselves, but potentially wise enough to choose a better path." Blackwell had fallen silent, his corporate agenda struggling against the magnitude of what they were witnessing. The security team had lowered their defensive stances, equally captivated by the unfolding revelation. The images culminated in a view of Earth from space, but not as it currently appeared. This Earth glowed with health, its atmosphere clear, its oceans pristine. Cities existed in harmony with nature rather than in opposition to it, and energy patterns suggested technology far beyond current human achievement, yet somehow more organic, more integrated with natural systems. A possible future, Dr. Vasquez interpreted, or perhaps a goal to strive toward. The portal pulsed once more, and a pathway materialized within its golden boundaries, a corridor of light leading into depths that sensors couldn't penetrate. The invitation was clear, but so was the magnitude of the decision before them. Thomas looked around at the assembled group. Scientists driven by discovery, corporate representatives motivated by profit, law enforcement bound by duty, and his daughter, representing the hope and potential of the next generation. Each face reflected the internal struggle between fear and curiosity, between maintaining the status quo and embracing transformative change. "My grandfather trusted in something greater than himself," Thomas spoke into the charged silence. "He believed that when the time came, humanity would be ready to receive this gift. Not because we're perfect, but because we're capable of choosing. Wisdom over greed, cooperation over conflict." He extended his hand to Sarah, who took it without hesitation. "I'm going through, not as a farmer defending his land, but as a human being accepting responsibility for what comes next. Anyone who shares that intention is welcome to join us." Dr. Chen stepped forward immediately. "The pursuit of knowledge for the benefit of all. That's why I became a scientist." Her team quickly followed, their instruments recording everything, but their hearts committed to something beyond mere data collection. Sheriff Torres hesitated, then removed her badge and placed it carefully on a nearby rock. "Rita Torres, private citizen, accepting an invitation to witness history." Blackwell stood frozen in indecision, his lifetime of corporate conditioning warring with the undeniable evidence before him. His security team watched their employer carefully, awaiting direction in a situation that no training had prepared them for. "The portal responds to intention," Sarah reminded gently. "It knows why each of us is here." As if to emphasize her point, the golden light seemed to reach toward those who had declared their willingness to proceed while maintaining a neutral glow around those still harboring ulterior motives. Blackwell's shoulders sagged slightly, and for the first time, Thomas saw the man behind the corporate mask. "I've spent my entire career believing that resources exist to be exploited, that profit was the highest goal. But this..." He gestured helplessly at the portal. "This suggests something so far beyond our petty concerns." "Then leave those concerns behind," Thomas offered. "Step forward as Marcus Blackwell, fellow human being, not as a corporate representative." The transformation wasn't instant, but Thomas could see the internal struggle playing out across Blackwell's features. Finally, the executive removed his tie, that symbol of corporate authority, and folded it carefully before placing it on the ground. "I suppose if this is the end of the world as we know it, I'd rather witness it firsthand than read about it in a report." His security team exchanged glances before their leader, a grizzled veteran named Reynolds, spoke up. "Where you go, we go, sir. But maybe we leave the weapons behind." The gesture of disarmament seemed to please the portal, which brightened noticeably as the security team carefully placed their equipment aside. The pathway of light solidified further, taking on an almost crystalline quality that sparkled with internal illumination. Thomas took the first step into the corridor of light, feeling a sensation like walking through warm water. There was no disorientation, no sense of danger, only a profound feeling of rightness, as if every choice in his life had led to this moment. Sarah walked beside him, her hand still firmly in his, while the others followed in a mixture of wonder and trepidation. The passage itself defied physical description. Colors existed here that had no names in human language, and the concept of distance seemed malleable, as if they were traversing both inches and light years simultaneously. Thomas could feel information flowing around them, not in words or images, but in pure understanding that bypassed conventional senses. "The walls," Dr. Park observed with awe, "they're composed of organized energy patterns. It's like walking through a living equation." As they progressed deeper into the portal, the corridor began to widen, opening into a vast chamber that challenged human perception. The space somehow existed both within the confines of the crater and beyond all conventional dimensions. Geometric structures floated in precise arrangements, each one pulsing with the same golden light that had formed the portal. At the center of the chamber stood a raised dais, upon which rested an object that drew every eye with magnetic intensity. It appeared to be a sphere of pure crystal, perhaps 3 feet in diameter, within which swirled patterns of light that suggested entire galaxies in miniature. "A repository," Dr. Chen whispered, her scientific instruments forgotten in her hands. "It's storing information in quantum crystalline matrices. The data density must be incalculable." As the group approached the dais, the sphere responded to their presence. Light patterns within its depths coalesced into recognizable forms: DNA helixes, mathematical formulae, star charts, and technological schematics that even the scientists could only partially comprehend. Thomas felt his grandfather's compass grow warm in his pocket. When he withdrew it, the needle no longer pointed to the Pleiades, but directly at the sphere. As he held it up, a beam of light connected the compass to the crystal, and suddenly the chamber filled with a presence that was felt rather than seen. Words formed in their minds, not heard, but understood with perfect clarity. "Welcome, inheritors of Earth." You have passed the first threshold. The voice, if it could be called that, carried no judgment, only infinite patience and something that might have been hope. For generations, we have watched your species grow, struggle, and evolve. We have seen you split the atom and reach for the stars, witnessed your capacity for both creation and destruction. Now you stand at the crossroads, as many have stood before you. Images flowed through their consciousness, civilizations rising and falling across cosmic time, some achieving transcendence, others consuming themselves in the fires of their own advancement. The knowledge contained within this repository represents not our technology, but your potential. It is tailored to your species' current level of understanding, designed to guide rather than overwhelm, to suggest rather than dictate. Sarah stepped forward, drawn by an irresistible urge to understand. Why us? Why this place and time? Every species that survives its technological adolescence does so through the actions of individuals who choose guardianship over exploitation. Your ancestor, Walter Hargrove, demonstrated this quality when he encountered us. He could have sought personal gain from our meeting, but chose instead to protect knowledge until humanity was ready to receive it. Thomas felt a surge of pride in his grandfather's wisdom, followed by the weight of responsibility that had now passed to him. The crater was not an intrusion, but an invitation. It appeared when your species' actions began to irreversibly alter your planet's biosphere. You face a choice: continue on a path of extraction and consumption that leads to diminishment, or embrace technologies and philosophies that work in harmony with natural systems. Dr. Vasquez found her voice. You're offering us solutions to climate change, to resource depletion. We offer tools and knowledge. The solutions must come from you. Free will remains the prime directive of cosmic evolution. We cannot save you from yourselves, but we can provide the means for you to save yourselves. The sphere pulsed brighter, and streams of light began to flow from its surface, touching each person present. The sensation was indescribable, not painful, but overwhelming, as if their minds were being gently expanded to accommodate new ways of thinking. Thomas saw glimpses of technologies that merged seamlessly with natural processes, energy systems that amplified rather than depleted, agricultural methods that enhanced rather than extracted, cities that breathed with the rhythms of the ecosystems they inhabited. More than just technical knowledge, he perceived a fundamental shift in perspective, a way of seeing humanity not as separate from nature, but as an integral part of a vast, interconnected web of life. Sarah gasped as mathematical concepts beyond current human understanding flowered in her mind. Equations that described the fundamental harmonies of existence, patterns that revealed the deep connections between consciousness and matter. Dr. Chen and her team received insights into physics that transcended their current models, glimpses of a universe far stranger and more wonderful than their theories had suggested. Matter and energy were revealed as expressions of a deeper substrate, one that responded to consciousness and intention in ways that would revolutionize science. Even Blackwell, the corporate man, found his worldview transformed. He saw economic systems that measured success not in extraction and profit, but in regeneration and systemic health. Business models that created abundance through harmony rather than scarcity through competition. The transmission of knowledge seemed to last both moments and eons. When the light finally subsided, each person stood changed, their minds expanded with possibilities they could barely begin to process. The repository will remain accessible to those who approach with appropriate intention, the presence communicated. But knowledge alone does not ensure wisdom. You must choose how to apply what you have been given. The sphere dimmed to a soft glow and the presence withdrew, leaving them alone in the chamber with the weight of cosmic responsibility on their shoulders. Thomas was the first to speak, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We've been given a second chance, not just as individuals, but as a species." Dr. Chen nodded, tears streaming down her face. "The implications, the technologies I glimpsed could solve every major challenge facing humanity, but they require a fundamental shift in how we think about our relationship with the planet. And with each other," Blackwell added quietly. The corporate executive seemed smallest of all of them now, humbled by the magnitude of what he'd experienced. "Everything I've worked for, everything Pinnacle represents, it's all based on a paradigm that's obsolete." Sarah moved to the sphere, placing her hand gently on its surface. "It's still active, still willing to share, but I sense conditions. The knowledge can only be accessed by those who truly intend to use it for the benefit of all." "Then we have work to do," Thomas declared. "We need to share what we've learned, but carefully. This kind of paradigm shift can't be forced. People need to be ready to receive it." Sheriff Torres, who had remained quiet throughout the experience, finally spoke. "There will be resistance, powerful interests that profit from the current. System won't give up easily." "No, they won't," Blackwell agreed, his corporate experience now valuable in a different way. "But I know how they think, how they operate. I can help navigate those waters." The group spent several more hours in the chamber, discussing implications and strategies. The scientists documented everything they could, though they quickly discovered that much of the knowledge resisted conventional recording. It had to be experienced directly, consciousness to consciousness. As they prepared to return through the portal, Thomas took one last look at the sphere. The responsibility it represented was enormous, but for the first time in years, he felt hope for the future. His family's legacy of guardianship had prepared him for this moment, but the path forward would require all of humanity to embrace their role as caretakers rather than conquerors. The journey back through the light corridor seemed shorter, as if their expanded consciousness now better understood the space they were traversing. They emerged into the Montana morning to find that barely an hour had passed in conventional time, though the experience felt like it had lasted days. The crater had changed. Where before it had been a mysterious anomaly, it now appeared as a carefully designed interface between worlds. The blue glow had settled into a steady, peaceful luminescence, and the geometric patterns in the air had organized themselves into a permanent display that suggested both welcome and warning. Approach with wisdom or not at all. As the group gathered their equipment and prepared to face the monumental task ahead, Thomas felt his grandfather's compass once more. The needle now pointed steadily north, its special purpose fulfilled. But the warmth it had carried during their journey remained, a tangible reminder of the trust that had been placed in him. "What do we tell the world?" Jake Thompson asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Thomas looked around at the faces of his unlikely companions, scientists, corporate executives, law enforcement, and his daughter, all transformed by their shared experience. "We tell them the truth," he said simply, "that humanity has been offered a gift, but it comes with responsibility, that the choice between wisdom and greed isn't philosophical anymore, it's practical, with consequences that will determine our survival as a species." Sarah added, "And we start here in Copper Valley. We demonstrate what's possible when people choose cooperation over competition, when we see ourselves as guardians rather than owners." Dr. Chen was already making plans. NASA will need to restructure its entire approach. This isn't about space exploration anymore. It's about planetary transformation. We'll need new departments, new protocols, new ways of thinking about our mission. Blackwell pulled out his phone, then hesitated. "I need to resign from Pinnacle." But first, I think I'll schedule a board meeting. They should hear what I've learned directly, even if they choose not to believe it." As the group began to disperse, each carrying the weight of world-changing knowledge, Thomas remained by the crater's edge. The portal had closed, but the connection remained. He could feel it in the land beneath his feet, in the air he breathed, in the very fabric of reality around him. The test wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. The real challenge lay not in discovering the truth, but in convincing humanity to embrace it. The visitors had provided the tools, but the work of transformation would require every person who chose wisdom over greed, cooperation over conflict, guardianship over exploitation. As the sun climbed higher in the Montana sky, Thomas Hargrove, farmer and now cosmic guardian, began planning the next harvest. But this time, he wouldn't be planting crops. He'd be cultivating a new way of thinking, one seed of consciousness at a time. The future his grandfather had glimpsed in 1952 was now within reach, but it would take all of humanity working together to grasp it. The crater stood as both reminder and promise, proof that the universe responds to intention and that sometimes the greatest adventures begin not with a step into the unknown, but with the choice to protect what we've been entrusted to guard. The morning breeze carried the scent of possibility across Copper Valley, and for the first time in generations, the land itself seemed to whisper of hope. The morning after their journey through the portal, Thomas awoke to find his ranch transformed. Not by any physical change to the buildings or land, but by the presence of so many people. Dr. Chen's NASA team had established a perimeter around the crater with sophisticated monitoring equipment that hummed with quiet efficiency. Blackwell, having undergone what could only be described as a profound conversion experience, had dismissed his security team but remained on site, making endless phone calls from his SUV, his corporate armor discarded for a simple button-down shirt with rolled sleeves. Sheriff Torres had called in deputies she personally trusted to manage the growing number of curious locals who had spotted the unusual activity from distant roads. Thomas stood on his porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the sunrise paint red, Rock Ridge in gold and amber light. The crater's blue glow had subsided to a gentle pulsation that seemed to follow the rhythm of daybreak, as if synchronized with Earth's natural cycles. "Couldn't sleep either?" Sarah asked, joining him with her own steaming mug. Thomas shook his head. "Keep seeing those images in my mind. Other worlds, other civilizations facing the same choice we're facing. Some making it, some not." "I know," Sarah replied softly. "It's like having a library downloaded into your brain, but you can only access random volumes at a time. I spent half the night writing down equations I don't even fully understand yet." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the activity around the crater intensify as the day brightened. Dr. Park and Dr. Vasquez were comparing notes with animated gestures, while Jake Thompson calibrated increasingly complex instruments. Dr. Chen moved between groups, coordinating efforts with the precise efficiency of someone accustomed to managing extraordinary situations. "They're taking soil samples from the transformed areas," Sarah observed. "The molecular structure has been completely realigned. It's like the most fertile topsoil on Earth, but engineered at the quantum level." Thomas wasn't surprised. During his communion with the portal, he'd glimpsed agricultural systems that worked in harmony with natural processes rather than against them. The vision had included soil that functioned as a living organism, nurturing plants while sequestering a carbon and regenerating from use rather than becoming depleted. "We should plant something," he suggested. "See what grows in that soil." Their contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Ben Caldwell's weathered pickup truck. The neighboring rancher who had lost his property to Pinnacle approached cautiously, his expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Tom," he called, keeping a respectful distance. Words spreading about lights in the sky and government, vehicles. Townsfolk are saying everything from alien invasion to secret military testing. Thought you should know. Thomas descended from the porch to greet his old friend. Ben, thanks for the warning. It's complicated. More complicated than even the rumors, I suspect. Ben's eyes traveled to the crater site where the unusual equipment and bustling scientific team confirmed that whatever was happening was far from ordinary. You gonna tell me what's really going on up there, or am I better off not knowing? Thomas considered the question carefully. The knowledge from the portal included an understanding of how this revelation needed to spread, not through sudden, shocking announcements that would trigger fear and defensive reactions, but through direct experience and demonstrated benefits that could bypass established resistance. Why don't you come see for yourself? He offered. But I warn you, Ben, what you'll learn can't be unlearned. It'll change how you see everything. The veteran rancher straightened his weathered hat. After losing my family's land to those corporate vultures, I reckon I'm ready for a new perspective. As Thomas led Ben toward the crater, Sarah's phone chimed with an incoming message. Dad, she called, her voice tense. Dr. Chen says we have company coming. Satellite imagery shows a military convoy heading this way from the north and another group of vehicles approaching from the south. Looks like Pinnacle Corporate Headquarters has mobilized. Thomas's brief hope for a gradual, controlled revelation evaporated. The world was converging on Copper Valley far faster than anyone had anticipated. How long do we have? He asked, his mind racing through possibilities. The military is about 40 minutes out. Pinnacle maybe 30. Sarah replied, already moving toward the research team. I'm going to help Dr. Chen secure the data they've collected so far. Thomas turned to Ben. Still want to see? We don't have much time. Ben's weathered face hardened with determination. Lead the way. As they approached the crater's edge, Thomas felt the now familiar resonance, a subtle harmonic vibration that seemed to recognize him. The blue glow pulsed in greeting, and the geometric patterns in the air above the crater shifted to accommodate newcomers. Dr. Chen met them halfway, her professional composure showing cracks of concern. Mr. Hargrove, we have a situation developing. Our superiors are demanding immediate information, and based on communications we've intercepted, there are some very powerful people who want this site contained and classified beyond civilian access. What about your promise of transparency? Thomas challenged. I'm keeping that promise, she assured him. That's why I'm warning you. My team and I believe in what we experienced, but the science and security establishments operate on protocols designed for control, not collaboration. Once they arrive in force, maintaining open access will become challenging. Blackwell joined their impromptu conference, now looking more like the corporate executive they'd first met. Pinnacle's board has called an emergency meeting. Elizabeth Morrison herself is leading the convoy heading this way. They're bringing legal documentation, asserting mineral rights under state law that supersedes surface property ownership. They can't just take my land, Thomas protested. They're not planning to take it, Blackwell explained grimly. They're planning to lease the subsurface rights through compulsory pooling statutes. It's a legal maneuver that allows mineral extraction under property even when the surface owner objects, provided they pay a standardized royalty. Thomas felt his jaw tighten. This isn't about minerals. They have no idea what they'd be disturbing. Precisely why I resigned effective immediately, Blackwell confirmed, but they're coming anyway. Morrison won't accept my reports as credible. She thinks I've been compromised. Ben Caldwell, who had been listening with growing anger, burst out, "So we're about to have the US military and a mining corporation fighting over who gets to seize control of whatever this is?" He gestured toward the crater with exasperation. Dr. Chen nodded solemnly. That's an accurate assessment of our current situation. The gravity of their predicament settled over the group. The cosmic knowledge meant to offer humanity a chance. A genuine transformation was about to become a battleground for competing power structures, intent on control rather than understanding. We need to show them, Thomas decided suddenly. Not just tell them, show them. If enough of the right people experience what we experienced, it might change the dynamic. That's unacceptably risky, Dr. Park objected, joining the discussion. We don't fully understand the selection criteria the portal uses. What if it rejects them? Or worse, what if it shares different information based on their intentions? That's exactly why it might work, Sarah countered, excitement building in her voice. The technology responds to intention. It showed each of us what we needed to see, what we were ready to understand. If the military and corporate representatives approach with control or exploitation in mind, the portal will respond accordingly. Thomas completed her thought. It's not about convincing them with our words. The knowledge itself will do the convincing. Dr. Chen considered this strategy, her scientific mind weighing variables. It could work, or it could backfire spectacularly. But given the alternatives, we don't have much time to implement whatever plan we choose, Blackwell reminded them, checking his watch. 22 minutes until Pinnacle arrives, 35 until the military. Thomas felt the weight of decision bearing down on him. His grandfather's letter had spoken of guardianship, of protecting the knowledge until humanity was ready. But how could he make that determination for others? Perhaps the portal itself was the best judge of readiness. Open the portal, he instructed Dr. Chen. Your team has the data on the frequency patterns that triggered the initial opening. Let's have it active and visible when they arrive. As the NASA team hurried to implement this strategy, Thomas turned to Ben. You should see this now before they arrive. If things go badly, at least one more person will know the truth. He led Ben to the exact spot where he had first connected with the portal. The older rancher stood uncertain, his lifetime of practical experience offering no framework for the phenomenon before him. What do I do? Ben asked, uncharacteristic vulnerability in his voice. Just be open, Thomas advised. The rest happens naturally. Ben cautiously approached the crater's edge. The blue light responded immediately, reaching out to envelop him in the same cocoon of energy that Thomas had experienced. For several minutes, Ben stood motionless within the light, his weather-beaten face transformed by expressions of wonder, shock, grief, and finally, profound understanding. When the light receded, Ben staggered slightly. Thomas caught his arm to steady him. You all right? I saw. Ben struggled to find words. Everything, how it all connects, the water cycle, soil biology, energy flows, all the things our modern agriculture disrupts without understanding. Tears tracked down his leathery cheeks. My grandfather knew. Before the industrial methods took over, he farmed with these principles. I thought he was just old-fashioned, but he understood. Thomas nodded, recognizing the pattern. The knowledge adapted itself to each recipient, connecting to their personal experience while expanding their perspective beyond previous limitations. Dr. Chen approached urgently. We've re-established the harmonic frequency pattern. The portal is beginning to respond, but it's different this time. More deliberate. Indeed, the crater's glow had intensified, but instead of the previous golden gateway, it was forming what appeared to be a display of some kind, a three-dimensional projection that hovered above the crater's center. It's showing Earth, Sarah realized, watching the globe materialize in perfect detail. But look at the patterns across the surface. The projected Earth revealed a network of glowing lines that connected various points around the globe, forming a geometric pattern of remarkable precision. 7 points pulsed with particular brightness, one of them centered exactly on Copper Valley. The other sites, Dr. Vasquez breathed. The other locations where the visitors left their technology. As they watched, the projections zoomed in on each location in turn, revealing similar craters beginning to activate in the Sahara Desert, the Amazon rainforest, the Siberian tundra, the Australian outback, a remote Japanese mountain, and an island in the South Pacific. At each site, the same blue glow was emerging, responding to the activation in Montana. It's a network, Dr. Park theorized, frantically taking notes. They're connecting, communicating across thousands of miles instantaneously. The projections shifted again, now showing the current approaches to the Hargrove ranch. With perfect clarity, they could see the military convoy, 3 armored vehicles, 2 transport trucks, and several SUVs carrying what appeared to be specialized equipment. From the south, the Pinnacle contingent approached, a motorcade of black luxury vehicles led by a helicopter that had detached to scout ahead. "They're almost here," Thomas noted grimly. "Everyone clear on the plan? We let them see the portal for themselves. We don't try to control the outcome." The others nodded, though tension showed in every face. They were gambling that direct experience would accomplish what no amount of explanation could. That confronted with the portals. Wisdom, even those intent on control, would recognize the greater opportunity being offered. The helicopter reached them first, circling overhead before landing in an open field adjacent to the research perimeter. From it emerged a striking woman in her 60s, her silver hair cut in a severe bob that matched her precisely tailored suit. Elizabeth Morrison, CEO of Pinnacle Mining Corporation and one of the most powerful figures in the extractive industry, moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to bending reality to her will. She was accompanied by a team that included legal counsel carrying briefcases, technical specialists with monitoring equipment, and what could only be described as corporate enforcers. Security personnel with the hard eyes and careful movements of former military or intelligence operatives. Morrison surveyed the scene with calculating efficiency, her gaze lingering on the crater and its impossible blue glow before settling on the assembled group. "Marcus," she acknowledged Blackwell with cool professionalism. "Your resignation letter was quite colorful. Talk of cosmic revelation and fundamental paradigm shifts seemed unlike you." "Because I'm not the same person who worked for you, Elizabeth," Blackwell replied evenly. "Neither will you be after what you're about to experience." Morrison's eyebrow arched slightly, the only indication that his response had registered at all. Her attention shifted to Thomas. "Mr. Hargrove, I presume. I'm Elizabeth Morrison, CEO of Pinnacle Mining. Our geologists have detected some quite remarkable mineral formations beneath your property. I've come to discuss access arrangements personally, given the potentially historic nature of the discovery." Before Thomas could respond, the sound of the approaching military convoy drew everyone's attention. The vehicles moved with precision, creating a controlled perimeter that partially overlapped with the scientific equipment already in place. From the lead vehicle emerged a distinguished man in his 50s, wearing the uniform of an Air Force general, accompanied by what appeared to be scientific advisors in civilian clothing. General William Reynolds, United States Aerospace Defense. "Command," he introduced himself, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. "This area is now under military jurisdiction by executive order. All civilians are requested to cooperate fully with evacuation procedures." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her NASA credentials displayed prominently. "General Reynolds, I'm Dr. Amelia Chen, NASA Exogeology Division." My team has been conducting authorized research on this phenomenon under federal oversight. The general's expression remained impassive. I'm aware of your presence, Dr. Chen. Your superiors have been briefed. This situation has been reclassified as a potential national security matter, superseding scientific inquiry protocols. The standoff might have escalated immediately if not for the crater's sudden response. The blue glow intensified dramatically, and the projection above it shifted to display what appeared to be a historical record. Images of similar confrontations throughout human history, moments when discovery was suppressed in the name of security or exploited for profit. The sequence culminated in outcomes ranging from technological dark ages to civilizational collapse. The display captured everyone's attention, momentarily forestalling the jurisdictional conflict. Then, with timing that seemed deliberately orchestrated, the portal itself began to open, golden light spiraling outward to form the same gateway Thomas and the others had previously entered. "What is that?" General Reynolds demanded, his hand moving instinctively toward the sidearm at his hip. "That," Thomas replied calmly, "is why we're all here. It's not a mineral deposit or a security threat. It's an invitation." Morrison's eyes narrowed with intense interest. "Invitation to what, exactly?" "To understand," Sarah explained, stepping beside her father. "To see beyond the limitations of our current thinking. The beings who created this technology have been observing humanity for thousands of years. They've witnessed our development, our struggles, our potential. This is their gift to us, knowledge that could transform our world, but only if we approach it with the right intentions." The general and the CEO exchanged skeptical glances, united momentarily in their suspicion of such extraordinary claims, despite representing ostensibly opposing interests. "You expect us to believe that aliens have been monitoring humanity and decided to reveal themselves through a hole in a Montana ranch?" General Reynolds asked incredulously. "Not reveal themselves," Thomas corrected. "Share knowledge. And they chose this location decades ago, entrusting my grandfather as a guardian until the right moment, when humanity's need for a new direction became critical." Morrison's analytical mind was already assessing opportunities. What kind of knowledge are we talking about? Technical specifications, scientific principles, resource locations. "All of that and more," Dr. Chen answered, "but not in the way you're thinking. The knowledge adapts itself to each person who experiences it. It shows you what you need to understand based on your own context and capacity. For some, it translates into ecological insights. For others, new energy paradigms. For others still, social structures that could replace our current systems." The general's skepticism was hardening into opposition. "That sounds like a potential mimetic threat. If this portal is reprogramming human minds with alien concepts." "It doesn't reprogram," Blackwell interrupted. "It reveals. Shows you truths you already intuitively recognize but haven't been able to articulate. I went in thinking about resource acquisition and came out understanding regenerative systems. Nothing was forced. I simply saw more clearly." The exchange might have continued indefinitely if not for a sudden development. One of Morrison's technical specialists, who had been surreptitiously scanning the crater with portable equipment, approached his employer with urgency. "Ms. Morrison, you need to see these readings. The energy density within that light structure is off the charts. Whatever it is, it represents a power source beyond anything in our current technology base." His voice dropped, but remained audible. "The military will classify this and lock it away for decades. If you want Pinnacle to benefit, we need to act now." Morrison considered this information, her strategic mind calculating possibilities. To everyone's surprise, she stepped toward the portal with determined purpose. "Ms. Morrison!" Her security team called in alarm, moving to intercept her. She waved them off imperiously. "Stay back. I didn't build Pinnacle by sending others to explore opportunities first." General Reynolds moved to block her path. "Ma'am, I cannot allow civilian interaction with an unclassified phenomenon until proper protocols. Unless you're planning to physically restrain me, General, I suggest you reconsider your position," Morrison countered with the steel that had made her legendary in corporate boardrooms. "I have 6 congressmen and 2 senators on speed dial who would be very interested to hear how the military is preventing private enterprise from investigating a potential energy breakthrough on private land." The political reality gave the general pause. In that moment of hesitation, Morrison brushed past him and approached the Golden Gateway with the confident stride of someone accustomed to shaping the world to her vision. Thomas and Sarah exchanged concerned glances. Morrison's intention was clear: exploitation rather than understanding. How would the portal respond to such an approach? As Morrison reached the threshold, the golden light enveloped her just as it had the others. Her body remained visible within the illuminated cocoon, but her expression transformed rapidly, from confident determination to surprise, then dismay, followed by what appeared to be profound shock. For nearly 5 minutes, she remained frozen, in communion with whatever the portal was sharing. When the light finally receded, Elizabeth Morrison, titan of industry, architect of environmental exploitation, collapsed to her knees, her immaculate suit gathering Montana dust as tears streamed openly down her face. Her security team rushed forward, but she raised a hand to stop them. "No," she managed, her voice raw with emotion. "I'm fine. Better than fine. I understand now." Slowly, with uncharacteristic humility, she rose and turned to face the others. Gone was the calculating corporate mask, replaced by an expression of haunted clarity. "I saw what we've been doing," she whispered, though somehow her voice carried, "to all present. Not just Pinnacle, but all of us. The extraction without renewal, the separation from natural systems, the illusion of endless growth on a finite planet." She gestured helplessly, "And I saw what we could become instead, the technologies we could develop if we worked with natural principles rather than against them." Her gaze found Blackwell, and for the first time, genuine recognition passed between them. "You weren't compromised, Marcus. You were awakened." General Reynolds watched this transformation with military pragmatism, clearly weighing security implications against his curiosity. Whatever information is being transmitted appears to have significant psychological impact. All the more reason to secure this site until we understand the mechanism and potential consequences. Thomas recognized the critical moment. The general represented institutional thinking at its most entrenched: security through control, safety through isolation. If anyone needed to experience the portal's perspective-shifting potential, it was Reynolds. "General," Thomas addressed him directly, "you've devoted your career to protecting America. I respect that deeply. My grandfather served under Patton in Europe. He understood duty and sacrifice, but he also understood that sometimes protection requires wisdom, not just strength. I'm asking you to look before you classify, to understand before you contain." Reynolds studied Thomas with the measured assessment of a career military officer. "And if what I see conflicts with my orders, then you'll make a more informed decision about how to follow them," Thomas replied simply. Something in the farmer's straightforward honesty seemed to reach the general. After a moment's consideration, he nodded once, sharply. 2 minutes. If I'm not back out, my XO has orders to implement containment protocols immediately." He approached the portal with military precision, his posture rigid, his mind no doubt prepared to resist whatever influence might be attempted. The golden light enveloped him just as it had the others. The ensuing minutes stretched with excruciating tension. Morrison, still visibly processing her experience, had moved to sit on a nearby rock, her corporate team hovering uncertainly nearby. Dr. Chen and her scientific colleagues monitored the portal's energy patterns, while Sarah documented everything, with meticulous attention to detail. When General Reynolds emerged from the light, his transformation was less outwardly dramatic than Morrison's, but no less profound. His military bearing remained intact, but his eyes held a new dimension of understanding that subtly altered his entire presence. "Stand down containment protocols," he ordered his team, his voice steady. "Establish a cooperative security perimeter in coordination with the NASA personnel. No one enters or leaves without joint civilian-military authorization." His second-in-command appeared momentarily confused. "Sir, our orders from the Pentagon were explicit about assuming exclusive control. Our orders were to secure potentially transformative technology in the national interest," Reynolds corrected firmly. "Having assessed the situation personally, I'm determining that cooperative engagement represents the optimal strategy for national security." He glanced at Thomas with newfound respect. Some things can't be secured by containing them. They're only secure when properly understood and integrated. As the military team reconfigured according to their general's new directives, Thomas felt a momentary surge of hope. The portal's strategy was working. Direct experience was bypassing established resistance, allowing even the most entrenched perspectives to shift toward greater understanding. Dr. Chen approached with urgent information. "The network is fully activating," she reported, showing Thomas her tablet. "All 7 sites worldwide are now displaying similar portals. Local populations are gathering at each location. Various governments are responding with different degrees of alarm or curiosity." The projection above the crater confirmed her report, showing real-time images of the other 6 sites. In the Sahara, tribal elders approached a glowing crater with reverent caution. In the Amazon, indigenous leaders had already formed a ceremonial circle around their portal. The Siberian site showed Russian military vehicles alongside scientific equipment, while in Australia, Aboriginal elders were explaining something to suited government officials with animated gestures. "It's happening globally," Sarah realized. "The revelation isn't limited to us. It's being offered to all humanity simultaneously through multiple cultural entry points." Thomas remembered his grandfather's words about guardianship, not hoarding knowledge, but protecting it until it could be properly shared. This was the moment Walter Hargrove had been preparing for his entire life, the fulfillment of a promise made decades ago. As the morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the transformed gathering, Thomas witnessed something he would never have thought possible hours earlier. General Reynolds and Elizabeth Morrison were engaged in intense conversation, the military man and corporate titan finding common ground in their shared revelation. NASA scientists collaborated openly with military specialists, pooling their understanding. Local ranchers, including Ben Caldwell, had arrived to witness the phenomenon, each experiencing the portal in turn and emerging forever changed. By midday, what had begun as a jurisdictional conflict had transformed into an improvised council of sorts. Representatives from military, corporate, scientific, and local communities gathered in a circle near the crater's edge, sharing what they had learned and discussing implications. "The technology can't be weaponized," General Reynolds was explaining to his team. "It actively resists applications that harm or control, but it offers defensive capabilities beyond anything we've developed. Systems that protect without threatening, that secure without dominating." Morrison nodded in agreement. "It's the same with resource extraction. The portal showed me technologies that generate abundance without depletion. Energy systems that work with environmental flows rather than disrupting them. It's not just more efficient, it's an entirely different paradigm. Dr. Chen contributed her scientific perspective. The physics defies our current models, but doesn't contradict them. It's as if the portal fills in gaps in our understanding, showing us principles we were missing because of our limited perspective. Ben Caldwell, speaking for the local community, added pragmatic concerns. That's all well and good, but what happens to Copper Valley? Do we become some kind of government reservation, a research facility? Our way of life matters too. Thomas recognized the critical question underlying all others. How would this revelation be managed? Who would control access to knowledge that could transform human civilization? The portal had shown him potential paths forward, but implementation would require navigating complex human systems resistant to fundamental change. As if responding to these unspoken questions, the projection above the crater shifted once more. It displayed a global network of light points, beginning with the 7 major sites, but rapidly extending to form a web of illumination that crossed political boundaries, connected diverse ecosystems, and created a pattern reminiscent of mycelial networks or neural connections. Sarah, who had received particular insight into biological systems during her portal experience, recognized the pattern immediately. It's showing us how the knowledge should spread organically through connection and relationship, not through centralized control or distribution. Dr. Park analyzed the display with scientific precision. The pattern follows natural information transmission principles: exponential but selective growth, adaptive pathing around resistance, strengthening through use. It's essentially a perfect mimetic distribution model. General Reynolds understood the strategic implications. Attempting to classify or contain this would be counterproductive. The knowledge is designed to flow around barriers, to find paths of least resistance through social and institutional structures. Morrison, the corporate strategist, saw the business dimension. Traditional ownership models won't apply. Companies that attempt to patent or restrict this knowledge will simply become irrelevant, as it flows naturally to those who implement it openly. As the projection continued its expansion, covering Earth's surface with an increasingly dense network of light, Thomas felt his grandfather's presence strongly. Walter Hargrove had understood something profound about humanity's relationship with knowledge, that some truths needed to be protected not from discovery, but for discovery, at the right moment, when people were ready to receive them wisely. So what happens now? Thomas asked the gathered representatives of humanity's major power structures. It was Dr. Chen who answered, her scientific mind already processing implementation pathways. We document everything, create multiple redundant records of what we're experiencing and learning, establish open-source protocols for sharing and developing the knowledge, form interdisciplinary teams to translate cosmic principles into practical applications. General Reynolds added the security dimension. We ensure that no single government or organization can restrict access or hoard breakthroughs. This means creating international oversight with genuine transparency, not the usual lip service to cooperation while maintaining control. Morrison, perhaps most transformed of all, contributed her organizational expertise. We'll need implementation, strategies that allow existing systems to evolve rather than collapse. Sudden disruption would cause immense suffering, despite the long-term benefits. The transition requires careful management. Ben Caldwell brought the conversation back to local impact. And what about us, the people who live here, whose land hosts this cosmic library? Thomas considered the question carefully. Portal had shown him both opportunities and responsibilities associated with serving as a guardian. "I think we become a demonstration site," he suggested. "Not a restricted facility or a government compound, but a living example of how these principles can be applied. A place where people can come to learn and experience the knowledge firsthand." Sarah expanded on her father's vision, drawing on insights from her own portal experience. The ranch becomes a teaching center. The technologies developed from the portal knowledge get implemented here first, showing how regenerative agriculture and energy systems can transform a landscape. Other sites worldwide would do the same, each adapting the knowledge to local conditions and cultural contexts. As they discussed practical next steps, a young lieutenant approached General Reynolds with urgent information. "Sir, we're receiving reports of similar phenomena worldwide. Not just the 7 major sites, but smaller manifestations appearing in rural areas across every continent. The pattern matches the projection exactly." The projection confirmed his report, showing the light network continuing to spread, creating nodes of varying intensity that connected communities globally. The knowledge was already diffusing beyond their ability to monitor or control, following the natural transmission pattern it had displayed. "It's happening faster than we anticipated," Dr. Chen observed. "The information is selecting its own paths and guardians." Thomas felt both relief and apprehension. The cosmic knowledge would not be contained by any human institution. Its distribution now followed principles more organic than bureaucratic, more natural than political. But such rapid transformation carried risks of disruption and resistance that could lead to conflict. As the day progressed into afternoon, the improvised council continued working to establish preliminary protocols for managing the transition. Military security cooperated with scientific documentation, corporate resources supported local implementation, and community wisdom guided practical application. It was a collaboration unlike anything Thomas had witnessed in his lifetime. Representatives of normally competing interests finding common ground in the expanded perspective the portal had provided. By evening, the first test implementations were underway. Dr. Vasquez had adapted portal knowledge to create a water purification system that used geometric arrangements of common materials to restructure contaminated water at the molecular level. Ben Caldwell volunteered his contaminated well as a testing site, watching in amazement as water that had been rendered toxic by mining runoff emerged crystal clear and perfectly balanced with essential minerals. "This could transform water access globally," Dr. Vasquez explained, her scientific precision enhanced by cosmic understanding. "The principles can be adapted to any contaminant profile using locally available materials. No external power source required." Similar breakthroughs emerged in energy generation, agricultural methods, and materials science as the scientists translated portal knowledge into practical applications. Each demonstration reinforced the fundamental principle that working with natural systems rather than against them produced abundance without destruction. As night fell over Copper Valley, the crater's blue glow provided gentle illumination for continued work. The military had established a cooperative security perimeter that protected the site while allowing approved visitors. Pinnacle's technical team, now directed toward regenerative applications by Morrison herself, collaborated with NASA scientists on prototype development. Thomas found a moment of quiet reflection on his porch, watching the transformed activity on his land with a mixture of wonder and responsibility. Sarah joined him, bringing hot coffee and her tablet showing global developments. "It's happening worldwide," she reported. "The other sites are experiencing similar cooperation miracles. In the Amazon, loggers and indigenous leaders are working together on sustainable forestry models. In Australia, mining companies and Aboriginal communities are developing regenerative land management practices. Any resistance? Thomas asked, aware that disrupting established power structures inevitably created backlash. Sarah nodded soberly. Some. Certain governments are attempting to restrict access to their sites. Religious authorities are divided between those embracing the knowledge as divine wisdom and those condemning it as deception. Financial markets are fluctuating wildly as investors try to predict which industries will thrive or collapse in the new paradigm. Thomas wasn't surprised. The portal had shown him potential resistance pathways and their eventual resolution. The knowledge accounts for that. It spreads around barriers, finding alternative paths through receptive communities. The harder institutions try to control it, the more irrelevant they become as implementation proceeds elsewhere. Still, Sarah countered, the transition period could be chaotic. People depend on existing systems, even destructive ones, for their immediate survival. Rapid change, even positive change, creates casualties. The concern reflected wisdom beyond her years, an understanding that transformation required not just new knowledge, but compassionate implementation. This, too, had been part of the portal's teaching, that technological advancement without corresponding ethical evolution led to suffering rather than liberation. Their contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Chen and General Reynolds, both looking simultaneously exhausted and energized by the day's events. We've established preliminary communication protocols with the other 6 major sites, Dr. Chen reported. Each is experiencing similar manifestations tailored to local cultural contexts. The Amazon portal presents knowledge through ecological relationships, while the Siberian site uses mathematical principles. The content is consistent, but the expression is customized for optimal integration. General Reynolds added the security perspective. Multiple governments are attempting to assert control, but finding their usual methods ineffective. The Russian military established an exclusion zone around their site, only to discover the knowledge had already spread beyond their perimeter through local communities. Chinese authorities are struggling with spontaneous implementations, appearing in rural villages far from their containment efforts. And here, Thomas asked, concerned about potential American intervention beyond Reynolds's cooperative approach. The Pentagon is divided, the general admitted. Some advocate for immediate classification and restricted access. Others, including several who've now experienced the portal directly, argue for open development. For the moment, my cooperative security approach has been approved as a pilot program, contingent on demonstrated benefits. Thomas understood the implied pressure. If they couldn't prove the value of unrestricted knowledge sharing, more controlling elements might yet assert dominance. The cosmic wisdom needed to produce tangible results that spoke louder than security concerns. We need to accelerate implementation of the most visibly beneficial applications, he suggested. Water purification, sustainable agriculture, non-destructive energy generation demonstrate immediate value to ordinary people's lives. Dr. Chen agreed. My team is working on precisely that. By morning, we should have several working prototypes ready for wider demonstration. As they discussed strategy for the crucial days ahead, a subtle change in the crater's illumination caught their attention. The steady blue glow had begun to pulse rhythmically, and the projection above it shifted to display what appeared to be an alert of some kind. Something's happening, Dr. Chen observed, already moving toward the research equipment. The group hurried to the crater's edge, where the scientific team was recording unprecedented energy patterns. The projection had focused on a specific region of the global network, the South Pacific site, where unusual activity was occurring. The oceanic node is experiencing interference, Dr. Park reported, reviewing incoming data. Someone is attempting to disrupt the portal's harmonics using counter-resonance technology. The projection showed military vessels surrounding the island where the South Pacific portal had manifested. Equipment emitting disruptive frequencies had been deployed, visibly destabilizing the Golden Gateway that had formed there. Who would have counter-resonance technology? Thomas asked, alarmed by this development. General Reynolds grimaced. Several possibilities, none reassuring. Certain special access programs have been researching countermeasures against exotic energy signatures for decades. For 3 years, Thomas Hargrove watched as his modest Montana ranch became the epicenter of humanity's greatest transformation. The crater technology had spread worldwide, following the natural pathways shown in that first projection, finding receptive communities while bypassing resistance. Where governments had attempted control, the knowledge simply flowed around them, emerging in unexpected places through ordinary people who approached it with wisdom rather than greed. Copper Valley had changed beyond recognition. The barren fields, where struggling ranchers once battled drought, now demonstrated regenerative agricultural methods that produced abundance while sequestering carbon and revitalizing ecosystems. The community that had been dying as young people, fled for urban opportunities, now thrived as a global learning center where visitors from 6 continents came to witness practical implementations of cosmic knowledge. Sarah led the education programs, translating complex portal principles into understandable demonstrations that visitors could implement in their own communities. Her simple handbook, Harmonizing with Earth, had been translated into 47 languages and distributed freely worldwide, becoming a practical guide for those ready to embrace new ways of living in balance with natural systems. The transition hadn't been without challenges. Economic disruption occurred as extractive industries collapsed, while regenerative enterprises flourished. Political tensions flared when power structures based on resource control found themselves increasingly irrelevant. Yet the portal had foreseen these struggles, providing guidance for navigating the difficult passage from exploitation to harmony. On this crisp autumn morning, Thomas stood once more on Red Rock Ridge, watching golden sunlight illuminate a valley transformed. The crater remained, though its glow had subsided to a subtle luminescence that pulsed in rhythm with Earth's natural cycles. It had served its purpose as catalyst, initiating humanity's evolution toward more conscious partnership with their planetary home. "Quite a view," Ben Caldwell remarked, joining Thomas on the ridge. The former rancher now coordinated the valley's water restoration project, his practical wisdom enhanced by cosmic understanding. Hard to believe this was all dying just a few years ago. Thomas nodded, watching electric vehicles with the Guardians, network logo bringing another group of international visitors to the learning center. Grandfather knew. He didn't understand everything that would happen, but he knew it was important to protect this place until the right moment. "You thinking about the transmission tomorrow?" Ben asked. The anniversary of the crater's appearance had become a global observance, marked by synchronized activities at all 7 major sites. "Just wondering what's next," Thomas admitted. "The knowledge showed us pathways for healing our relationship with Earth. We've barely begun implementing what we've learned, yet already there are hints of something more. The stars, the other worlds the visitors mentioned." Ben chuckled. "One step at a time, Tom. First we learn to be proper stewards of our own planet. Then maybe we'll be ready for neighbors." As they descended toward the community gathering, Thomas felt his grandfather's compass warm in his pocket, though it now pointed reliably north. Occasionally, particularly during cosmic events, it would shift, indicating directions beyond conventional understanding. A reminder that humanity's journey had not ended with the crater's revelation, but merely begun a new phase. The Hargrove legacy had evolved from simply preserving family land to helping shepherd a planetary awakening. In the distance, Thomas could see the next generation already carrying that purpose forward. Sarah, working with children from around the world, teaching them to perceive the living intelligence in soil, water, and air. The cosmic guardians had chosen well when they entrusted Walter Hargrove with their knowledge decades ago. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity now approached them with expanded awareness of their place in the cosmos, not as conquerors entitled to consume and discard, but as conscious participants in a living system that extended from microbes to mountains, from quantum particles to distant stars. The humble farmer who had simply wanted to protect his family's legacy had helped crack open humanity's limited perspective, allowing something greater to flow through. As Thomas joined the gathering beneath the Montana sky, he carried his grandfather's quiet certainty that even the most ordinary life could serve extraordinary purpose when aligned with deeper wisdom. The crater had not saved humanity. It had simply reminded them how to save themselves. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.